Hello, friends and fellow flute enthusiasts, and thanks for tuning in. Today, we're going to look at two triple flutes that I have in my collection, and we're going to be looking at the differences in them. There's a lot different with them, so pay close attention. We're going to be talking about the maker, the key, how they're made, and the setup of them, which has a lot to do with how they're made and the keys. So, kind of wrap that all together. I want to start today, actually, not with this one. I brought this one up so you could kind of see it first, which is a beautiful chunk of wood, which we'll talk about in a second. But the first one that I want to bring up is probably one that you've seen me record and do videos here on YouTube with. This is a flute made by High Spirits Flutes. And I wanted to bring up this because of the way that it's made, the keys, and talk about some benefits to a flute that's made like this. A lot of the things that I talk about with this particular flute will also be applicable for an over-under drone. So just as an example to kind of bring you into the awareness of how we talk about drone flutes, we have our normal, we say normal, our side-by-side. So this is just a regular double flute. Some people call it a shotgun drone because it's side-by-side. It's built into the same piece of wood, which is like that first drone flute that I showed you, like this. This would be considered a side-by-side. This is what we call an A-frame. But then there's the over-under. I don't have one to show you, but great examples of makers making flutes like this would be Brent Haynes of Wood Sounds Flutes, Ron Stutz, Native Sunrise Flutes. There's a couple other ones that are making them, and they look like this, but they're stacked like this. So you would play them like this. They're not in different directions. They're all straight across. So an over-under, one barrel over the other, another under the other, or the top one. So this is an A-frame, and the benefit to something like this is that your hand it feels like playing a single flute because you're not having to reach around. So if you have short fingers, an A-frame flute might be the ticket for you rather than just settling on a smaller flute overall because you don't have to reach all the way around another barrel to get to those holes, whether it's on the bottom hand or the top hand. The disadvantage to this is you get a little crowding like this. You can see my hand bumping in over here, okay? So there's a little bit of crowding that might happen, especially as you get to a smaller flute. This angle is going to get smaller, and so you may end up with having to tuck your wrist under a little bit more rather than keeping it out. So a benefit and a disadvantage. This particular flute, each one of these barrels, each one of these flutes, are tuned to the key of A. They are exactly the same. So we'll start over here on my left. There is a flute with no holes, so this plays a constant A. It'll play the fundamental A, which is the root note, and the A above that, it's octave above. So it'll play a root and an octave of A, just by breath control. Some flutes are more moody than this. If yours won't hit that octave, especially when you're playing a drone, you can tweak the block a little bit and manipulate the flute to get that sound, but some just like to be a little more stubborn than others, and there's no fault in that. It's just a preference. You may prefer it, you may not. That's cool. Let's go over here to my right side. This is just like this one, and also just like this one, but it has half the holes of this one and more holes than that one. Sorry, I got a little carried away. Here we have a key of A flute, and it has the bottom three holes of an A flute. Just like if I were to cover these three, you see the same thing here and here. Okay, and with this particular flute, there are plugs and straps, and I go into detail about what's good or bad in my course on drone flutes. But with this flute, we have straps that can cover up these. You can play them independently, so as a melody flute. have some fun with it. Then we have our melody flute, which is just like a regular flute. Now there are mouthpieces or embouchure holes here that you can play one singly. You can play these two together. You can play these two together. You can play all three at the same time, which I've done in several videos. So I just wanted to demonstrate this. We get our drone. We get our harmony, which can play a fourth, a fifth, a third, a root, or melodically, like I just played a little bit, we'll play with the fifth. Okay, so this is one type of drone flute. I want to bring up this other one here to kind of go through as well, because this has a different, everything about this is different. Some things that carry over are the three independent blocks, which, by the way, this is a flute made by Dustin Selva of Elemental Flutes. It's made from Purple Heart. It's got a little bit more weight to it just because of the wood, but I know he makes these out of cedar and other woods too, if that's a concern for you. This flute is radically different. You can see it's all side by side, all built out of the same piece of wood. And it's kind of compact, even though it's, you may look at this and go, well, that's a kind of a big flute. In my hands, it doesn't feel like that big of a flute. So what we have here is a G flute. This is actually a key lower than the A we just saw. So on my right side here, I have the 6-hole melodic flute. In the middle barrel here, so this one here, we have a G flute with the 3 holes. I have plugs in them right now, but there are holes underneath of these plugs which play the bottom 3, just like in the other flute that I showed you. But the difference in this flute, as compared to the one before, is that this flute, the smaller one, is in the key of D. It's a 5th above these other 2. And everything still transfers. There are 3 separate embouchure holes, so I can play a single flute, a drone flute. I could play them all together and play the triple flute experience, if you will. So I'll give you a quick demo of this. I have a review on both of these flutes on my channel, which I'll put a link to in the description below. So here we go. Bringing in the drone. And now for that high flute. And something, if you wanted to play them all together, you could keep that G there. And actually, let's do something here. I'm going to take this plug and put it over here. See if I can do this. So now I have a high G, a D, and I'm going to make this D now my melody, playing all 3 at the same time. So there's lots of different combinations that you can really get into the weeds with. You might say, I want to keep the low G there and I want to do these 2. Again, lots of things that we can explore within a flute like this when we talk about harmony. Now, I have a whole course on playing drone flutes, that are set up in a different way, both double, triple flutes, and walking you through the harmony and the dissonance, things like that. It's a standalone course. It's also included in our membership called Horizons Plus. I'll leave some information below for you to check out there. Today's video, the purpose, I wanted to show you the differences when we talk about triple flutes, how different they really can be by design, by key, by tuning. Then we bring up 432, 440, those types of things as well. And that's a conversation for another time. But I just wanted to show you the differences in the triple flute so you can make the best decision when you're adding a flute to your collection. Which, by the way, if you are looking at adding a flute by Elemental Flutes, Dustin Selva, I've got a little coupon, a little gift below for you to check out as well. Dustin makes a lot of different flutes, triple, double, single, lots of different frequencies, and he also does some custom work. You can talk to him about that as well if there's a flute that you have in your mind and in your heart that you would love to have in your hands. Hey, thanks for tuning in to this episode. If you have any questions about flute, flute playing, learning to play the flute, just drop those in the comments below. We'll come through and answer those, or you can reach out to me through my website at JonnyLipfordMusic.com. I appreciate if you subscribe and like this video. I'll see you in another one very soon. Take care.